It's opening day at Alec Box Stadium, and we've got your season predictions for LSU baseball on Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is opening day at the box. We'll give you a full series preview for LSU and Purdue Fort Wayne. You'll hear from LSU coach Jay Johnson. We had some crazy LSU athletics revenue numbers which have come out. I think you might find this interesting. It'll give you some good perspective on LSU athletics and why things sort of operate the way they do. But I don't want to bury the lead. Before we go further into this weekend, I want to start by going big picture and give you my season predictions for LSU baseball. And this is a team that's coming off of a disappointing season a year ago. Of course, Jay Johnson showed up in Baton Rouge, fresh off a College World Series appearance with Arizona. He comes to Baton Rouge year one. They go 40-22, 17-13 in the conference. You know, they end up traveling for regional play against Southern Miss. We know they don't advance there. Year two, we know the drill. They bring in Paul Skeens, Tommy White, and my goodness, was it a special year. 54-17 went the Tigers, 19-10 in conference. And of course, they won the College World Series. And then as the defending champion, the Tigers scuffled. They really struggled out the gate in conference play and stumbled their way to a 13-17 conference record. They did get into regional play, and we know lost in Chapel Hill when they were in the driver's seat and appeared like they were going to be able to advance and then ultimately host a super regional, but couldn't hold a lead in the ninth inning against North Carolina. And so those Tigers, their season ended in prematurely. So LSU goes out this offseason. What do? They go ham just like the football team did. They signed the number one transfer portal class in the country, the number one high school class in the country. And Jay Johnson, yet again, has a loaded gun. But there's a big difference between LSU's team a couple of years ago that won the national championship and this one. While this one has all of the talent, all of the pieces, all the projectability, what it doesn't necessarily have is all of the experience at this level. They got tons of arms, but Anthony Ayenson, who we talked about, UC San Diego, will it translate? Jacob Myers from Nichols, one of the top strikeout pitchers in the country, will it translate to the SEC consistently? Can he avoid the walks? Zach Cohen was the ace for Wofford. What's his role going to be in trying to get SEC hitters out? Daniel Dickinson, one of the top position players in the transfer portal in this class, but he's coming from Utah Valley to LSU, just a dramatically different reality. It's not to say it can't happen. We've seen great players make that transition. I mean, Brandon Larson was a guy who came in and was, a National Player of the Year guy. Led LSU to the 1997 national championship, and of course was a first-round draft pick. Spent just one season at LSU. So certainly it can happen that way. But this is a very talented LSU team that, as Jay Johnson said, might be built just a little bit differently because while Jay is an offensive guy, feels like he's really leaning more on defense this year.
I feel like we're in a good spot, and I feel like there's some versatility with what we can do with some guys. Like Mikey Ryan is a really good defensive player. Like he could factor into late in the game. I feel like, we have the left side of the thing settled. Danny's going to play second base, so that's settled in terms of, what he needs to work on to be better there. The outfield defense has a chance to be spectacular. The catchers, like we can line them up where they can be in a good spot to catch the right pitchers. And then it's going to come into play more with the nature of our pitching staff. And so being a good defensive team is going to be really critical to being the best team that we can be.
They got to be a really good defensive team, but he also mentioned a lot of questions there. So you're moving Stephen Milam to short and Braswell III. They haven't played in that spot. Said you might be elite defensively in the outfield, which I agree. Stanfield in center, Curiel in left, and then any combination of Brown, Pearson, Larson, and right. yes, you're going to be really good. Defensively, you heard Jay say you can line it up however you want at catcher, but some of the scuttle so far is that Cade Arrambide and Blaze Priester maybe haven't been great defensively so far in this pre-conference. So how does that come along? You've got talent, you've got projectability, but you don't have are proven commodities. When Tommy White returned last year at third base, you had a proven commodity right there. Like, I know Bear Jones is going to play first base and is going to be awesome. Like, I know Stephen Milam and Michael Braswell are going to be in the lineup every day. I think Chris Stanfield's going to be in the lineup every day. I think Derek Curiel is a great chance to be that, but I don't know that. Curiel could scuffle and could go to the bench. Stanfield could scuffle and you could see Jake Brown in center. We don't know what's going to happen in right field. You could have any number of combinations behind the plate. I guess the point is, like, when you look back to that championship team 2 years ago, every day, when Jay went to write the lineup card, Dylan Cruz was in center, Tommy White was at third, Jordan Thompson was at short, Trey Morgan was at first, Gavin Dugas was at second. You know what I mean? Like, you had dudes you knew every day were in the lineup, no matter what. And then you play, you could tinker a little bit here or there. We saw some rotation behind the plate, a little bit, defensive replacements. We saw some rotation at the corner outfield spots. But by and large, there were 5 or 6 guys every day that you knew were in the lineup no matter what. I don't know that this team has that. I think they got tons of people who are certainly capable of being in the lineup every day, but that's got to get settled. Now, Jay also did talk about Milam playing short and Braswell playing third in that decision.
Just peeling back the layers about that, like Steven's feet in terms of coming and getting the ball, moving right and left, really good clock and understanding the speed of the game was really good. I honestly think we would have been there a long time ago without any drama had he not missed half the fall. And then with Michael, I haven't seen the game really speed up on him at third base, and as he continues to get more reps there, I think he'll be an excellent third baseman. And so really wasn't that hard, but again, seeing it through was really important.
Will it stick? Will be interesting, but it's also, you remember Milam had the foot injury, which cost him half the fall, which is what Jay talked about there. So, it took a little longer to get there to where you solidified Milam at short and Braswell at third, but you still got to go do it night in and night out in the SEC. Like, this team, it's a given. You're going to write Bear Jones' name in the lineup every day, and he's going to play first base. And you're going to write Stephen Milam in the lineup every day, and we assume he's going to play short every day on this team. A lot of stuff is still a little ambiguous about who is going to be in the lineup and where they're going to play. So when you look at how this may shape out for LSU, remember coming off a 13-17 season in conference a year ago, I do think we've talked a ton about pitching, and I think the pitching is very similar. You've got a dozen arms. I mean, you have numbers, no doubt. What you don't have are guys that have proven they can consistently get SEC hitters out week in, week out, game in, game out. And that's going to have to be something that evolves in what these guys' roles are throughout this season. Like, we know as it starts, you're going to have Cade Anderson as your Friday night guy, Anthony Anderson on Saturday, and then Chase Shores on Sunday. But there's also 10 guys who are going to be, give you meaningful innings out of the bullpen. Jay even talked about the approach from the bullpen being different this year.
I kind of went into this thing, to be honest with you, about thinking about doing it a little bit differently than maybe in the past. Maybe paring it down. I spend so much time with Coach Burtman, and one of his things is no matter what you think you always have 8, maybe 10 on a really good team. And I definitely agree with that. I do think there's guys beyond that can contribute if we utilize them right. So it's not overly or really lined up just yet.
That was always Skip's thing. He knew who the guys were that he could count on. And Jay has extended that. And even in saying, you could hear on the soundbite there, Coach Berman said, you have eight. No matter what you think you have, you got 8. That you're going to count on. And even he said, acknowledged that and said, but we may have more, maybe 10, to see if you could stretch it. But who do you count on? It's also a very different era as well, where you have to consider pitch counts and arm care and all that sort of stuff, which is just dramatically different in baseball than it was 30 years ago or 25 years ago when Skip last coached in college baseball. But Jay did go through the bullpen options.
Obviously Gavin has done it. You like him in any point in the game. Connor Ware, I've talked about him a lot. William Schmidt, Kason Evans. Primo has really done well since we've been back. Connor Benj has been awesome. Jacob Myers, really hard to hit. Jaden Newt has pitched really well for the last 3 weeks. Talk about a nice shot in the arm for him. I'm really proud of him. And, Cooper Williams, I think, is going to be a key part of the staff. Dalton Beck has been pretty good, too, recently. And, coming in, we were recruiting him maybe a little bit more as a hitter. I do think there's an avenue for him to contribute as a pitcher. Grant Fontenot has had a really good few weeks. So you get the point.
And there he goes and rattles off double-digit names in addition to your 3 starters. So Skip may tell him, hey, man, it's 8. No, I don't think Jay's going to pitch 8, no matter what his thought is. I think you're going to see a lot of guys, especially on a weekend like this. The hope is by the time you get to the end, you know who the 8 are that you're going to count on in what roles, so you can go play your best and hopefully make a deep run into Omaha. And by the way, I will give you that prediction here in just a quick second. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto. Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. They have a script here, but I'll tell you candidly, like I am a Factor customer, was before we started doing these reads. For years, my wife would spend Sunday trying to meal prep for me. And I said, we're going to take this off your plate. I'm going to go find a meal subscription service and I'm going to give you your Sundays back. And I tried them all. You name it, I've tried them all. And I will tell you, Factor, by a mile, is the best tasting, most convenient, best service that you will find. It is as simple as they say. You can pick the number of meals you want. I get 8 entrees a week that I intermittent fast, so I never eat breakfast. So my 8 allows me to get lunch and dinner. There are a lot of times where I might have a client lunch or something like that. So that's what fits me every week. If I need to skip a week, you just skip a week. If you want to cancel, you cancel. But I did Protein Plus for a while. I switched to the chef's choice, to where now they just pick the meals for me. It gives me great variety. You can pick whatever you want. It's super easy, and it comes shipped to my door every Monday. So every Monday it's shipped, and I have meals for the rest of the week. Could not be easier. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. It's convenience. There's no prep. There's no mess. You literally just slit the film, put it in the microwave for 2 minutes, and you're ready to eat, and it's delicious. Could not recommend Factor highly enough. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off. Use the code LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnCollege50 off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Okay, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get to the LSU Purdue Fort Wayne series preview here in just a quick second, but I'll run through the schedule for LSU. We all know how it's going to go in the pre-conference. LSU is going to win a lot. They might lose a game here or there. It's just what it is. Look, they lost to Southern last year. They play Southern in a midweek. They got to go play at Nichols next week in a midweek. They got a really fun game up against Dallas Baptist in Arlington at Globe Life Field. They're going to play in Frisco. They'll play Kansas State, Nebraska, Sam Houston. There's plenty of opportunities for LSU to stack wins, and I think they'll do it. But really what matters, as we always talk about, is your conference record. It's always, always, always about your conference record. So I look at how LSU starts, and they play Missouri, and I think you have a great chance to sweep Missouri in the opening weekend. I don't like to predict sweeps. That very seldom goes the way you want it to, because it's baseball and good teams lose to bad teams sometimes in baseball. I just think LSU's going to outclass Missouri. It's at home. It's a great way to start with a series win and hopefully a sweep. So I think they start 3-0. Then I do think they, in fact, lose a series at Texas to move to 4-2. They'll play Mississippi State and Baton Rouge, and I think the Tigers get 2 of those. That moves you to 6-3. They're going to play in Norman, Oklahoma, and I think that's a winnable road series. So I think LSU does get 2 there to move to 8-4. Then they go to Auburn, where I think they'll take 2 out of 3, which moves them to 10-5. They're home against Bama, where I think they'll take 2 out of 3, which gets you to 12-6. Then you got to play Tennessee, and that series is in Baton Rouge. I'm going to go on a limb and say that LSU does in fact take 2 out of 3 to get to 12-7 in league play before they go to Texas A&M and drop 2 out of 3. That puts you at 13-9. You play Arkansas in Baton Rouge, which will be a very, very difficult series. But I do think you'll end up getting 2 out of 3 at home, which puts you at 15. And then you go to South Carolina to take on Paul Maneri's South Carolina Gamecocks. And I think the Tigers will take 2 out of 3 on the road to put them at 17 league wins. So I've got LSU this year at 17-13 in conference play. And we'll see if 17-13 is enough to get you a host site. 17-13 is probably not enough to get you a national seed, but 17-13 in the conference put you in a position where you'll be hosting. You'll let the chips fall where they may, and you'll see if you can maybe have a super regional come through Alec Box Stadium if there's an upset. If not, you'd have to go win 2 out of 3 on the road somewhere. But that's what I'm locking in. LSU 17-13 in conference this year, and we'll see if the Tigers can get it done and push their way back through to Omaha in 2025. And as we always say, it's so hard to make a prediction of what can happen in Omaha because you never know what the draw is. It's almost like college football. Look, this year with the playoff, Oregon had the best regular season. They were the number 1 seed. They got the worst draw. Sometimes it happens that way. So you can't control your draw and how that all plays out. What you can control is putting yourself in position to make sure that postseason goes through the box. So hopefully the Tigers can do that, advance, get to Omaha, and just play their best baseball over a couple weeks in Nebraska come June. Now, it's going to start on Friday with LSU hosting Purdue Fort Wayne. The Mastodons of Purdue Fort Wayne. First time ever, LSU and Purdue and Fort Wayne have met. The Mastodons are a member of the Horizon League, mostly known for basketball around the NCAA tournament. Teams like Oakland and Wright State, Northern Kentucky, the Norse. Those are teams from the Horizon League that we also often see around NCAA basketball tournament time. We know LSU's rotation will be Cade Anderson, Anthony Ainson, and Chase Shores. For the Mastodons, all 3 pitchers are transfers. So game 1, Dylan Fisher will go. He's a transfer from Earlham College. He's a graduate. He's a righty. Game 2, it'll be lefty Zane Danielson, who's a transfer from Lincoln Land Community College. And then in game 3, it'll be junior righty Gavin Walters from Lansing Community College. So they're going to go righty, lefty, righty. LSU is going to go lefty, righty, righty with Cade Anderson, Anthony Ainson, and then, of course, Chase Shores. LSU has won 23 consecutive season opening games. The last time LSU lost their opener was back in 2001. Skip Bertman's last season as the coach at LSU. They lost 9-8 to Kansas State at the original Alec Box Stadium. So it's been a long time since the Tigers lost an opener. And I don't suspect they dropped this one. I think LSU is far more talented than the Dons, and I do think that they'll get it done this weekend, which shouldn't come as any great surprise. When you look at Purdue Fort Wayne, they were 19-37 a year ago, just 11-19 in the Horizon League. So this is not even a good mid-major program. Justin Osterhaus is their leader. As a freshman last year, he was all Horizon League, second team. He slashed .355, .424, and .609 with 9 homers, 38 RBIs a season ago. And they did play, by the way, last year against Missouri and split a 4-game series. They went 2-2 against an SEC team a year ago. Not a great offensive team. They hit .270 as a squad. They did run a good bit. 69 stolen bases on 80 attempts. So something worth keeping an eye on. But this is the bugaboo. Last year, Purdue Fort Wayne's pitching staff posted an 8.33 team ERA. opponents hit .331 against them. This should be a massive offensive weekend for LSU against Purdue Fort Wayne. It's a series you should have no trouble winning. It's just an opportunity to get out there, roll the ball out there, and play against someone in a different colored jersey before you head to some more intense weekend series. LSU and Purdue Fort Wayne. It is worth noting Friday's game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Saturday, they moved up because of the threat of rain in the Baton Rouge area, 11 a.m. Saturday, and then Sunday at 1 p.m. as LSU and Purdue Fort Wayne will open up the 2025 baseball season. Okay, we'll knock out our final break. When we come back, you might find these numbers interesting. This always surprises people, but I want to roll through it when we come back. Locked in LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off and want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature. Live betting is so much fun. If you want to in-game props, you want to in-game spreads, lines, totals, you can certainly do it. I love to live bet basketball, especially overs, late in games. If you get situations where late game scenarios and it's close, you're going to get fouls and free throws. So sometimes you can get some of those overs to hit. Anyway, it's easy to use. Check it out. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. When we talk numbers, this always floors some people. And admittedly, I probably pay way more attention to the business of sports than most people that cover the team, and maybe more so than most fans or observers care. But the way that I always explain it is you can't win if you're not invested financially. You can't. You've got to be able to pay coaches and build great facilities and now pay your players through NIL and what's coming with revenue share. So the money has to make sense. And candidly, for you and me, there's nothing we can really do to control or alter these numbers. But in explaining some of this stuff, I think it does help at least explain or quell some of the fan narratives that are just wrong about things. Like, for example, the LSU women's basketball team. Kim Mulkey's done an awesome job. What if I told you, like the old 30 for 30K, what if I told you that LSU's women's basketball lost over $8 million last year? Like, think about how insane that is. Women's basketball, Kim Mulkey, all they've done there, they lost over $8 million. The biggest financial loser on campus. $8.57 million in the red. Is it worth it? I think so, because of the notoriety you get. But if you're just looking at a balance sheet, it doesn't make sense. There's only 2 sports on campus that make money. Football made over $50 million profit. And so then what you do is you take that surplus, and that's what funds the rest of the athletic department. And then men's basketball is the only other one. LSU baseball last year, by the way, lost over $1 million, which is just incredible to think. As successful as they've been, LSU last year lost $1.9 million during Jay Johnson's 3rd season. Now, they broke even the year before when they won the national championship. But it just goes to show you when people assume things like, oh, gymnastics has to be making money. Gymnastics loses millions of dollars every year. But the PMAC's full. Yeah. And tickets are cheap and there's only 6 meets. So there isn't enough revenue opportunity in those sports. Every sport on campus loses at least $1 million, which is crazy to think. But that's how, whenever we get into these conversations about revenue share, about Title IX and all that, that starts to crystallize some of these conversations when you realize that you have one sport, really football, that's funding the whole thing, and only 2, football and men's basketball, that are turning a profit. And it goes back to the point that I'll underscore again as we've talked about basketball. The fact that LSU doesn't invest in men's basketball more is maddening because it's the only other revenue generator you have. So you can be as bad as LSU is and still make money. Well, what if you actually invested in men's basketball? What could it look like if you were good, if you were filling the Maravich Center every single game, if you were making deep postseason runs every year? Like, you are leaving money on the table by your unwillingness to invest in men's basketball. But the other part of this that's so interesting, and this is the NIL component. So LSU did over $220 million in total revenue. Okay, so top line, all in, about $220 million in revenue. Now, they spent over $200 million as well. So they netted a $1.73 million profit. When those aren't great margins, by the way. When you do $220 million in revenue and you net $1.73 million, that ain't great margins. But anyway, but the objective isn't to earn a margin; it's to fund your athletic department and to try to win, which clearly they do. But the difference, the massive difference in revenue from where they were just over $200 million a year ago to $220 this year was contributions. LSU received $43.8 million in contributions that were not specific to one team. Hello, NIL. Up from $23.8 million during fiscal 2023. The report stated that contributions can be used on departmental operations or facilities. Well, you decide what departmental operations are. That's the component, is that LSU finally is fundraising for NIL and for revenue share to be more competitive with their rosters. And it's the thing you had to do to be competitive. Listen, LSU just fielded a football team that went 8-4. They spent about $5.5 million on that roster. For context, Auburn this year is spending about $8 million on its basketball roster. Auburn is spending millions more on its basketball roster this year than LSU did on its football roster just now. That's all about to change. It is changing. It's why you just saw LSU land the #1 portal class in the country. They finally raised and spent the money to be great. Now they got to go do it on the field. But if anybody tries to tell you anything about an ROI for women's basketball or gymnastics or any other sport, doesn't exist. Every single sport on campus loses money except for football and men's basketball. You will always give football whatever it needs to succeed, but you better start doing the same in men's basketball. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now, for your second listen, how about you go check out my guy Chris Gordy over at Locked On SEC, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. Hey, if you're listening to us on podcast, thank you so much. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.